It's a warm Sunday morning in July 2022. In the town of Strongsville, Ohio, there's hardly anyone on the streets, except for a motorcyclist who's already hopping on his bike around 6:30. This early in the morning, he has the road practically to himself. But as he rides down a street, something catches his eye. Right in front of the concrete wall of a large building stands a badly wrecked car. But apart from the motorcyclist, there's no one else around. There's no sound, no movement coming from the totaled car. Apparently, he's the first one to arrive at the scene of the accident. The motorcyclist dials 911. At least that way, he'll be able to save a life. 2 others have already been lost. But as it soon turns out, this isn't an accident at all. Mackenzie Shirilla was born in Ohio in 2004. In 2022, she's probably already looking forward to her 18th birthday. But she already has plenty of reasons to celebrate. She just graduated from high school. When it comes to love and relationships, Mackenzie seems more mature on paper than many people her parents' age. Mackenzie has been dating her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, for 4 years now. He's 20 years old and graduated from high school a long time ago. He's currently trying out a few different career paths, but his big dream is to launch his own clothing line as a designer. Dominic and Mackenzie have even been living together since early 2022. Dominic's family owns several properties, and he and his girlfriend live alone in one of them, while Dominic's parents and brother live on the neighboring property. Mackenzie started posting regularly on TikTok back in high school, covering topics like fashion, beauty, and lifestyle. She's been quite successful at it. By the time she graduated from high school, she already had a sizable following. Every now and then, companies even sent her products to try out and review. So, after graduating, Mackenzie actually has the best possible start to adult life. If you were to ask Dominic Russo's family, they'd have a very different opinion. Ever since Mackenzie and Dominic moved in together, something seems to have gone wrong. The two keep getting into arguments. Mackenzie, in particular, is said to be the aggressor. Even the parents of Devion, a mutual friend of Mackenzie and Dominic, don't have a high opinion of the 17-year-old. They say Mackenzie is a bully, someone who takes pleasure in belittling and humiliating others. Still, on the whole, the relationship between Mackenzie and Dominic is holding up, as is their friendship with Devion. Devion was in Mackenzie's graduating class and has now also finished school. So on the last weekend of July 2022, he, Mackenzie, and Dominic are looking for something fun to do that evening. You might first think of a big house party, but on July 30th, the couple and their friend are drawn to more low-key events. That Saturday evening, starting at 10 p.m., the 3 of them first visit Mackenzie's close friend, Kelly. A few friends have gathered there to sit around a campfire and play some board games, but the 3 of them don't even stay for an hour. Afterward, they head straight to a mutual friend's place, Paul Burlinghouse. The atmosphere at Paul's is relaxed, with music playing in the background, but their host, Paul, gets tired early. By midnight, he calls it a night at his own party and goes to bed. The mood among the others seems perfectly normal, so he has no reason to feel bad about leaving his friends on their own. Mackenzie, Dominic, and Devion stay for quite a while longer. They don't leave Paul's house until 5:30 a.m. 10 minutes later, 2 of them are dead. On the morning of July 31st, 2022, emergency medical personnel and police arrive in the suburb of Strongsville. The reason for the call? A violent car accident. At the scene, at the intersection of Progress Drive and Alameda Drive, emergency responders are met with a harrowing sight. A 2018 Toyota Camry has crashed directly into the wall of a building. The front end of the car is completely demolished. Even experienced emergency responders are utterly shocked by the scene of the accident. One of them even says it's the worst he's ever seen. A woman is sitting behind the wheel, a man is in the passenger seat, and another man is in the back seat. Neither of them was wearing a seatbelt. The two young men are showing only faint signs of life. The woman is unconscious, but she is in better condition by comparison. A rescue helicopter arrives, but the team can do nothing more for the two men. So everyone focuses on at least saving the woman's life. The 17-year-old driver of the car is trapped, but is freed by a special rescue unit. Only when Mackenzie is finally pulled from the wreckage does she begin to scream. Then she asks a single question. How is Devion? Mackenzie will be taken to a nearby hospital. There, she undergoes several emergency surgeries, but is out of danger. As it turns out, about 45 minutes passed between the accident and the emergency call made by the motorcyclist. In the meantime, so early on a Sunday morning, simply no one had passed by the scene who could have noticed the accident. Mackenzie has a broken leg and several broken ribs. When she regains consciousness at the hospital, she is told that her boyfriend Dominic is dead, just like her friend Devion. Devion was only 19 years old. He is survived by two sisters. The three were adopted and raised together by the Flanagans. Devion was the quarterback of his football team. He had actually wanted to become a hairstylist and was planning to enroll in the necessary courses. While Mackenzie recovers in the hospital, Devion's and Dominic's families must somehow cope with this terrible loss. As part of this, an online memorial page is set up for Dominic. It's a kind of digital condolence book, and Mackenzie also writes a few words to her late boyfriend. On August 8, 2022, Dominic Russo is laid to rest, surrounded by his family, 1 week after the fatal car accident. To the Russos, Mackenzie had long been part of the family. In a text message to Dominic's mother, Mackenzie writes the following about the crash. "I remember turning onto the street, and then everything went black before my eyes. It really upsets me that I can't remember anything. I promise you, I would tell you if I could. I asked my therapist why I can't remember, and she says it's due to trauma. I'm going to try getting hypnotized to bring back my memory." I couldn't find out whether Mackenzie actually ever underwent hypnosis, but the police don't really believe her story about the blackout anyway. By the time of Dominic's funeral in August, Mackenzie had long since been discharged from the hospital. While she was still in the hospital, she was told that the case would not be investigated as a normal accident, but as a possible double murder. Mackenzie then asked if they couldn't just revoke her driver's license for 10 years and leave it at that. During her recovery, the police keep an eye on Mackenzie's social media profiles. Some posts strike the investigators as odd, such as a video Mackenzie made of herself. In the caption, she writes, "I'm just one of those girls who can take a lot of drugs without dying." Her social media presence gets a real boost after the accident. She even receives an offer from a modeling agency. The agency is based in Los Angeles, and Mackenzie immediately expresses interest in being added to their roster. Her mother emphasizes at every opportunity that it was a tragic accident. Mackenzie herself also insists on this in text messages to Devion's family. She has flowers sent to his parents and siblings. However, this doesn't exactly make the investigators any less suspicious. Once her broken bones have healed, the young woman goes back to partying hard. She uploads videos and photos of this to social media. Her Halloween posts in particular are interpreted negatively, grief would probably look different. The crash happened just 3 months ago, especially since Mackenzie also goes to a concert while she's still in a wheelchair with her broken leg. Incidentally, according to reports, she is accompanied to this concert by, among others, cousins of her late boyfriend, Dominic. As it turns out, Mackenzie was not sober at the time of the accident. On top of that, the police find 7 grams of the psychedelic mushroom psilocybin on her. However, her blood alcohol levels were checked immediately upon arrival at the hospital and were within normal limits. Apparently, though, this isn't the first time Mackenzie has driven under the influence of drugs. On her social media profiles, there are more than 100 photos and videos of her smoking while driving. And as the police are beginning to suspect, Mackenzie has done far more than that. Investigators are questioning various witnesses to get a picture of Mackenzie and her relationship with Dominic. The statement from her ex-boyfriend Tyler is particularly important. He believes she intended to take her own life through the alleged accident without regard for the consequences. That's a pretty serious accusation. Dominic's family says that over the past 6 months, the relationship has been anything but harmonious, all because of Mackenzie's behavior. Dominic's mother reports that, over the course of 2022, Mackenzie had become increasingly possessive of Dominic. She describes threats, arguments, breakups, and disagreements. The digital evidence, that is, the messages, chat histories, photos, and videos on the victim's cell phones, is particularly valuable. The police quickly find what they're looking for on Dominic's phone. He had recorded several arguments with Mackenzie. In the recordings, she can be heard insulting him quite viciously at times. In one video, an argument can be heard that appears to be about the fact that the two had recently broken up. A few weeks before his death, Dominic is said to have called his mother from the car once while Mackenzie was behind the wheel. He is said to have made this call out of sheer fear. According to his mother, he said that Mackenzie was driving much too fast at the time. She was threatening him, and he couldn't get out of the car. The mother claims to have heard Mackenzie say in the background, "Dominic, I'm going to crash this car." Dominic's mother then called a family friend to come pick up her son. Upon arriving at the scene, the friend claims to have seen Mackenzie allegedly hitting Dominic inside the car. This paints a new picture of Mackenzie for the police. Not that of a teenager who caused a terrible accident, but that of a toxic person who went to extremes. On November 4th, 2022, Mackenzie was therefore arrested as a suspected double murderer. The case initially went before juvenile court, since Mackenzie was only 17 years old at the time of the accident. During a 3-day hearing, the first order of business was to convince the judge to prosecute Mackenzie as an adult, and they succeeded. This paves the way for a double murder trial. However, the defendant still claims to remember absolutely nothing. The trial will finally take place in August 2023. She is charged with murder, aggravated assault, grossly negligent homicide in a traffic accident, and drug possession. These are all serious charges, which makes it all the more important for the prosecution to be able to substantiate its allegations. Both the prosecution and the families of Dominic and Devion repeatedly emphasize that no one wanted this to be a double murder. But the circumstantial evidence is simply too clear. In court, one man's testimony is particularly important. Mark Sargent is a forensic automotive expert and is tasked with analyzing the final moments before the crash. Sargent has carefully examined all the available data, He is certain that the accelerator pedal was fully depressed in the seconds leading up to the crash, right up until the moment of impact, and that the brakes were not applied even slightly. The areas where all this took place are well equipped with surveillance cameras. That's why the Toyota's path right up to the moment of the collision can be fully traced using footage from the neighborhood. The footage shows that Mackenzie was driving around a curve just 1 minute before the crash. She was slowing down properly and adhering to the speed limit. But then, suddenly, the gas pedal was pressed all the way down. And you can even hear it on the videos. At that point, the car was traveling at a speed of more than 100 miles per hour. This is where the defense tries to make its case. Mackenzie wasn't wearing regular shoes, but rather fluffy slippers. The defense is trying to use this to its advantage. It argues that the slipper could have accidentally triggered the acceleration because it was wedged between the gas pedal and the floor mat. But Sargent rejects this possibility. He says he cannot recall any other case he has investigated in which the vehicle accelerated for the entire duration of the accident without braking even once. The brake, on the other hand, was not pressed even the tiniest bit. And since the car was inspected by mechanics and found to be in perfect working order, this is clearly human error. However, the expert also admits when he cannot definitively rule something out or confirm it. For example, the data regarding the steering wheel. It was, in fact, turned sharply to the right seconds before the crash. Mackenzie's lawyers, of course, say this is clear evidence that she tried to jerk the steering wheel to the right and prevent the collision after all. On the other hand, it's also possible that Dominic, sitting in the passenger seat, realized what was happening and reached for the steering wheel to jerk it to the right at the last second. But exactly what happened can no longer be determined. There is one thing, however, that Sargent can categorically rule out. He notes that there were no signs of a mechanical or electrical malfunction prior to the accident that could have led to a loss of control over the accelerator pedal, a loss of braking ability, or a loss of steering control of the vehicle. As always, a key question is the motive behind the incident, especially since Mackenzie put her own life at risk in the crash. However, the prosecution is arguing precisely along these lines. They claim that Mackenzie and Dominic had a toxic relationship, and that Mackenzie knew full well that Dominic would eventually end the relationship for good. So, she allegedly decided that if she couldn't have him, he should die. Her mother, in any case, testified in court that Mackenzie had never expressed any thoughts of self-harm to her. The route Mackenzie took wasn't the shortest one either. She is said to have driven this exact route just a few days earlier, though it was her first time doing so. The prosecution argues that she scouted out the route and tested her plan. The fact that Devion was also in the car was not part of the plan, but Mackenzie knowingly accepted the risk of his death. To her, the 19-year-old was nothing more than a piece of luggage in the back seat. This is presumably also meant to explain why, after the accident, Mackenzie asked about Devion, but not about her boyfriend, Dominic. The presiding judge also reached this conclusion. She described Mackenzie, who was 19 years old at the time of sentencing, as hell on wheels, and she is punished accordingly. Mackenzie Shirilla is sentenced to 2 life terms in prison, 1 for the murder of Dominic, 1 for the murder of Devion. The prison terms are to run for at least 15 years each, but will be served concurrently. This means she does not have to serve a total of at least 30 years. Mackenzie's parents continue to stand by her even after the verdict. They consider it completely negligent that a murder conviction was handed down based solely on technical data. No one knows what really happened inside the car. Even the onboard computer and the vehicle data don't show that, as the two argue. There is simply no evidence that Mackenzie crashed the car on purpose. Mackenzie and her lawyers are therefore trying to appeal the verdict, but to no avail. The sentence of 2 life terms remains in place. She is still in prison today, and she is still trying to find ways to get out of prison. So far, however, all her requests have been denied. Theoretically, Mackenzie has the possibility of being released on parole after 15 years. If prisoners participate in rehabilitation programs, pursue an education, or take a job, this can have a positive impact. Since Mackenzie is still young, her chances of early release are likely quite good. She is now in her early 20s and still has the chance to turn her life around and make something of herself. A chance that Dominic Russo and Devion Flanagan no longer have. Within the victim's family, people view the sentence with mixed feelings. Dominic's sister, for example, hopes that Mackenzie won't be released after just 15 years. That would be unfair, she says. And it's easy to understand her reasoning, because, as she says, her brother's life and Devion's life were stolen. The two of them won't be released in 15 years. They won't be coming back in 15 years. Dominic's father sees the whole situation somewhat differently than his daughter does, perhaps precisely because of his perspective as a father. He says he doesn't want the rest of Mackenzie's life to be ruined. That wouldn't make things any better for him. To him, Mackenzie is first and foremost a child who urgently needs help and support after doing something unimaginably terrible. Devion's parents see it more like Dominic's sister does. For them, it's incomprehensible that Mackenzie can serve both sentences virtually simultaneously and, in the best-case scenario, faces only 15 years in prison. This perspective is certainly understandable as well. None of us are in that situation anyway, and we don't know how we would think or act in such a scenario. But what are your thoughts on the matter? What do you think of the verdict in general? Is the punishment too lenient, or does she deserve a second chance? I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Other than that, there isn't much more to say. I hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, or evening, whichever time you're watching this, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, ciao everyone.